Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Mr. Dan Bar Hava. Oh, I did a drum roll. No, I don't want a drum roll. I want clapping. There we go.
I like the drum roll.
We can do a drum roll next time if you want to come on for your sequel.
All
But
right.
pressing buttons is hard for me. You think I'm a millennial, I'm good with technology, but a little slip of the hand, there's always mistakes. So,
No.
Dan, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you like to do?
Okay, I'm from Israel, Jerusalem, born and bred. And I'm a musician by everything. I started to play music when I was 4 years old. And I was the elementary school sensation when I took my recorder cover and held it between my knees and played a concert for 15 minutes because there was no the case. So people talked about it for a long time. After my military service, I studied music and science. I came to New York City to further my education in music, particularly jazz and composition. And I've always been writing. It took me a good amount of years to try my hand at writing in English because I didn't feel I was good enough. And writing is something I do on the side, but I get more and more into it seriously, which brings us here.
Okay, awesome. So you're in New York now, and so you mentioned music. I did a little bit of stalking on you, and I saw you're on IMDb, and you have a couple movies that you wrote for. So
Thank
I
you.
didn't look into the movies or anything, but what kind of genre would you say that those are?
Oh wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I didn't talk about that. Thank you. The way I roped into movies is because I wanted to write screenplays. I felt I always had an urge to write. I was a bookworm. My dad had to throw me outside the house, lock the door, and say, "Go play some ball because you're reading too much." So that brought me there. And what happened was that connects to the book that we're going to be talking about because I'm always fascinated by myth. I'm a rational person. I'm not religious, but myth fascinates the crap out of me.
Hmm.
And as a musician, I'm going to answer you. As a musician, uh, there is a myth that encompasses all styles of music. It's a very, very sexy kind of myth. There's a musical device called interval, which is what happens when you play two notes together. And there is a myth about something called the devil's interval. And that myth goes back hundreds of years. If you look it up, you'll see it. It's online. And I was fascinated with that myth for a long, long time. That is what brought me into writing. I wrote that script long time ago, and I was told that it's good, but it's too expensive, and I should be writing something that you actually can produce and raise the money for, which led me to write something that also had to do with music. And that's the movie you saw on IMDb. It's called Falling Star. It's a musical comedy. It's yeah, I would say it's a comedy about people, relationship, music, religion. The original title for the movie was Goy Band, and that's a play because Goy is a not so nice Yiddish word for non-Jew, and with a slight a little bit. So it's a play on boy band. But then when the distributor offered us the deal, they told me, and I made that decision. They said you cannot sell this with the name Goy Band because people are going to be thinking about Goya and think we're selling olives or olive oil because it sounds like Goya. And that's why the movie changed to be Falling Star. After that, I participated in a couple more screenwriting, but then I started to think about the other myth that was very fascinating to me, which is the book we're talking about.
Okay, and what instruments do you play yourself?
Piano.
Okay, nice. I as well play. I dabble in piano. When I was much younger, my parents forced me to play. As all children are forced by their parents to play. And my grandma taught me for a couple years, and so like I learned the basics, reading notes and all that stuff, and a few songs. Then I hated it, so I quit. And then in college, I remember hearing a score for a video game that I really liked, and I was like, you know what? I want to learn this on piano. So I learned on piano, and then I picked it up again, and I played on and off for a couple years. And I don't even have a piano right now. I really want to get a piano again someday. But whenever I sit down on a piano, the muscle memory kicks in, and I can play a few songs.
That's great. Just to tell you a little bit about the parents forcing, I have an older brother and a younger sister, and my dad was very adamant about all of us getting musical education. So we all played, but when my brother wanted to stop, he let him. When my sister wanted to stop, he let her. When I wanted to stop, he locked me in the room and forced me to practice.
Well, I guess our parents always know best, right?
In this case, thanks to him, fast forward 30, 40 years later, and here we are.
Nice. Well, thanks for the background. Let's switch and start talking about the 36 Watchers now. And I actually want to start at the end of this little submission that you gave me. So you wrote, Jenna and the Watchers are about to use their powers to change the course of history, protecting mankind from the ultimate evil, the demigod who rules the material world. So, to me, I am by no means an expert in Gnosticism, but this sounds a little bit like Gnosticism to me. You got the Demiurge, and I believe his name is Yaldabaoth. Again, not an expert, and he and the Archons rule the material world. So, is that where you were going with this, or walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely base my the evil in those book series is definitely based on Gnostic elements. And what I do is I reverse it. I reverse it. So in the world of the 36 Watchers, they are the reality. And in the world outside the 36 Watchers, which is where you and I sit, uh, the Gnostic gospel, the Gnostic knowledge, the name Yaldabaoth, and all that stuff is echoes of the reality which exists in the book. If that makes sense.
Okay,
So I
got it.
definitely draw like I
So what?
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I think there's a little bit of lag. I didn't catch that. Go ahead again.
Oh no, I said continue.
Okay, got it. So what genre would you say that this book is? I was under the impression it was fantasy, but is it actually a fantasy?
It is a hybrid between fantasy, science fiction, thriller, and conspiracy theory.
I like all of those. That's fascinating. So walk me through the different elements of what makes your book have each of those in it.
Wonderful. That's a great question. Thank you. What makes it conspiracy theory is that I offer alternate explanation to very important events, why they happen, and the events are on global scale. Crucifixion for one. That's the conspiracy theory element. The thriller element happens because of the fight between good and evil, and some very epic scenes that are describing that. And that also doubles in the fantasy element because those epic scenes that describe the battle between good and evil, they don't necessarily take place on our natural plane world, but they also involve elements of fantasy powers, fantasy fighting, fantasy struggle. The sci-fi portion of it happens because I root my uh, substance and my material in facts of science and science fiction and in between. So,
Mhm.
for example, the structure of the world that I created has a lot to do with there's a resemblance between that and the spheres of Kabbalah, the Kabbalah world. So that's one element. Another element is this acronym ORME, and I did a lot of reading on that in orbital rearranged monoatomic elements. That's science fiction. That's science. It's I read there's a person named Lawrence Gardner. If you like this stuff, he wrote a lot of books about a lot of these things, and I got a lot of ideas of what to use from him. So I borrow a lot of elements that are scientific or para-scientific, and I use them. So we got the fantasy, the science fiction, the thriller, and the conspiracy theory. Those are basically the elements of them. I'm probably forgetting some stuff, but it gives you the gist.
Well, now we have to read the book to find out the rest. So
That's right.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned earlier you were of Jewish heritage, but you're no longer religious. And then you mentioned this crucifixion. Um, tell me how that plays into the book as a conspiracy theory.
Okay, I can say something about that because it's not really a spoiler because it's not going to steal away from the plot too much.
Hmm.
My protagonist, I'm going to do this and see if you can see her because it's on my computer screen. I thought I would be sharing screen with you. But tell me if you see her.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So my protagonist becomes one of the 36 Watchers.
Hmm.
And as part of her initiation, she experiences what other Watchers did for humanity. That's part of her education.
Okay.
And a Watcher was Judas Iscariot in my book. Judas
Okay.
Iscariot is the person that historically stabbed Jesus Christ to death,
Hmm.
as you know.
Yeah, I know the
And
story of Judas. Yeah.
yeah, so in my story, that was done on purpose to allow the suffering world that was dying under the boots of ultimate power in the name of the evil Roman Empire. It gave them an opportunity to see that a soul can escape tyranny. It
Hmm.
had to be done.
Got it.
So that's an example of Watchers, of what Watchers do for humanity.
Awesome. That was perfect. And maybe you could tilt your camera down a little bit again. There we go.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. So you also mentioned some secret societies and the shadiness of Swiss banks. Um,
I
what
can
are?
elaborate.
I'm sorry.
I can elaborate a little bit if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so basically, I will start with the easy one. The ultimate evil human instruments of Yaldabaoth, with the supernatural Gnostic power that is the evil in my book. He has human agents, and the head human agent comes from Swiss banking. I just
Okay.
chose it. It's not something that this is. I did have some creative original thought in that story. I picked a lot of things that existed, like the crucifixion, like the Titanic, which I'm not getting into right now. But I also invented some things, and that was part of what I invented. The whole connecting between the ultimate evil to Swiss banking was something I came up with. It just felt
Hmm.
creatively and storyline wise the right thing to do. That does not have uh, um, roots in actuality in terms of that particular country. But when you ask me about secret societies, basically what I imply in the books, plural, because book one and book two and book three will hopefully be written soon because everybody is asking me when the third book is going to be written. And I got to write the damn thing. Uh, in the books, I imply that all the secret societies are either part of the Yaldabaoth evil circle of power or trying to imitate it. And
Hmm.
that's the connection.
Okay. What kind of research did you do to include these secret societies in your book? Did you infiltrate any of them, and you can give us like some actual details on what's going on?
By myself, no. That's a great question. I thought about it a little bit, but I was afraid. And the reason why I was afraid is because I teach in a very, very prestigious school. I teach in Manhattan School of Music in New York City. They find out I do something like this, I'm out of a job before 30 seconds are up. So I had to give up on that. But other than that, I did research immense, a lot of research.
Okay, got it. Um, all right, I like it. I like the combination of everything that you put together with all these different genres and the history of it and the secret societies of it. I guess do you subscribe to any of these conspiracy theories, so to speak, in real life? And are you trying to get any messages across, or is this all just fiction?
The message that I try to get across is that anything organized should be treated with suspect.
Hmm.
Anything organized comes with an agenda. I'm not a anarchist. It's not my nature. But I just look at any establishment, particularly religions. I have a real spot about religions. So I'm very critical of all religions, and I make it very clear in my books, but not just religions, political systems as well. So that is the conspiracy theory element. Basically, the message is, keep your eyes open.
Hmm.
That's the message in that. As far as me subscribing to some of these theories, I am an agnostic by nature, so I ask questions. So more, I asked all the questions, so maybe people usually do not ask. So that's as far as it concerns about that. And I desperately, desperately want to believe that supernatural elements exist in the world.
Hmm.
I hope they are.
Yeah.
And cynical me saying, if anybody was psychic, they would not be here talking to you and me. They would be in Vegas cleaning up the bank every Monday night.
Yeah.
So that's not happening.
Hmm.
But I want to, maybe by doing these books I contribute to people also that are looking for the supernatural, and maybe one day we'll have some sort of a vision of that. So that's a hope. I don't subscribe to it or believe in it, but I hope for it.
Okay, got it. And so, putting aside the supernatural aspects, do you think that a very small cabal of people run the entire world, veiled in secrecy, as in maybe these secret societies?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Maybe. That's always the
Maybe.
question. Maybe.
That's always the question. That's why I write the stuff.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, I think you stumbled upon a an excellent niche, and I'd be interested in reading that. But do you want to read an excerpt of your book tonight?
I will, and I'm going to read an excerpt from the book with very heavy heart, because I wrote these words uh, back in 2020. That's when I wrote the bulk of this book, before editing, before stuff like that. And the world, as you will know, and as everybody knows, turned upside down a couple of weeks ago, in Israel, in Gaza. And
Hmm.
I've been a long, I'm not a righty or a lefty, I'm a realist. And my protagonist presents my views. Jenna presents my views in the book. In the book, she goes to Israel. She goes on a mission to Gaza. And the exchange that I want to read is an exchange about that, which is just, people should have known better, basically. So I'm going to read that. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to read it. The introduction is, she has a handler in the Israeli Secret Service. She's supposed to infiltrate Gaza, and that exchange is part of talking about how she's going to do that. So I'm starting now.
Okay.
There is no airport in the Strip, and driving in would be a dead giveaway. On the other hand, buses go in and out all day long, usually shuttling back and forth Palestinian workers. Palestinian workers? Asked Jenna. I thought you guys were at war. With a deep weariness from having done this once too many, Yoav launched into the Gaza Strip's fact of life. The barbed wire in the south was there to separate mortal enemies, blood enemies. However, that didn't stop the scores of Palestinian workers who crossed into Israel every day to earn a living. In fact, without them, the Strip would have no economy to sustain itself. Even more incongruous was that Israel supplied the Strip with electricity, water, building materials, and the occasional money transfer from other Arab nations. Despite the de facto war between the two territories, it was a contradiction screaming to the heavens. And despite its many years as the status quo, Yoav still had trouble reconciling himself to its absurdity. He could only imagine how this struck this newbie. Never mind this green-eyed girl, Jenna, he would shortly send into the lion's den. I get it, said Jenna. There are interests on both sides for this crazy situation to be the way it is and to keep conditions as they are, right? She would later smile, remembering his expression. It was, after all, a company man, and she had clearly hit a nerve. Thankfully, thanks to her watcher self, she knew to back off, unlike her old Jenna self, who would have picked that bone clean there and then. That's
Awesome.
it.
Well, thank you for that. Everybody loves you. I have like 50 people behind me. They're just really small.
Seriously? Wow. Well, they sound like big clappers. Yeah, so that's nice.
Big hands, yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for reading that. I know not to get too political about anything, but it's a very tense part of the world right now, and it has been for a very long time. And it's interesting to see that you're still including things that are relevant today in a book that you wrote a few years ago. It's very interesting to see that.
Yeah, that's my point. You know,
Hmm.
I've been talking about this for a long time, and part of me writing these books is also about that. Definitely,
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have friends and family in the area still?
I do. In fact, I teach piano, and one of my piano students ended up going there and volunteering to become a soldier in the Israeli Defense Force, mainly because of stories I told him about my service. So now I feel responsible for him, and he's on the front line right there. And I get ask him
Hmm.
to text me every day to let me know that he's okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's
So let's talk a little bit. I'm sorry, what was that?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your road to publication. So tell me what your process has been. Are you self-published or traditionally published?
I am a hybrid publisher. So when I wrote the books, I looked into self-publishing, and I decided that I don't want to do it because it felt I needed some support. I realized that I'm a new writer. Nobody's going to give me a deal. You know, I'm a non-proven entity. But I looked for somebody that will look into my story and give me a chance as a hybrid. And the hybrid publishing model is the writer pays for some of the services.
Hmm.
And I found Austin McCulley Publishing, among some others, and I liked the exchange with them. And this was before I published book one, so we're going back now to 2018. And they sent me a contract, and they were very good. I had other offers that actually asked me to contribute less, but I liked their style, I liked their presentation, and I said I'm interested, and they said sure, just sign the contract and mail us a check. And I said no, I need to talk to people. I don't do this like that, you know. It's 2018. Maybe today it will not work like this anymore because the world has changed after COVID. But in 2018, I said I need to meet with people. And they said, no, we don't do that. Sorry. So, you know, we can't help you. So what I did was, and that's true, every word of it, I took the contract, I took the subway. Austin McCulley has an office in either 4 or 8 Wall Street. It's a Trump building. I went there and I said, hi, I'm here to see Austin McCulley Publishing. And people in the front, they said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, but I have a contract. And they said, you can go in. You don't have an appointment. I said, do me a favor, call them up. And they're like, no, sir, you have to go. You're not allowed here. And I said, I'm not leaving. I got a contract in my hand and I showed them the contract. And I said, please call them. So the manager looks at me and he realizes that I'm not going to go easy. So he calls them up. He talks to the floor manager, and she is shocked, but they let me upstairs. And I sat with them for about half an hour. 4 people, I forget who they were, forget their names. Probably not going to recognize their faces if I saw them. But it was a great meeting, and I signed the contract, and here we are.
Awesome. So I would assume since you actually signed the contract that you had overall a positive experience with them.
Wonderful experience, and I want to point out especially and specifically the marketing department, which is helping because Kagiso, aka Cage, is my marketing person in Austin McCulley. I talk to her once or twice a month. She is the one that facilitated me talking to you.
Mhm.
And she always sent other opportunities my way. It's invaluable support. I'm very happy that I made that decision. It's a great source of joy. The production itself can be tricky. There were some things about editing and proofing. That was a little back and forth. But I solved that mainly, and I want to give credit here as well, because I have a dear friend who has been with me as a student and as a faculty member. He's like my other self. We're very similar. Only he's a lot more educated than I am, and he's my editor. And his editing of book two, when you read the reviews, people are, with joy. So I want to give credit to him too. Between him, Alex, Cage at Austin McCooley, and Austin McCooley themselves as publisher, I could not recommend them enough. It's been a great experience. Emma from production, anybody else?
Awesome.
Yes.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I get a lot of mixed reviews on going traditional publishing versus what you did, hybrid publishing versus self-publishing. Everyone has great things and negative things to say about all of them, so I'm glad to get just a little bit of perspective on the hybrid publishing. Anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
I want to talk a little bit about the actual core of the book series that we haven't really touched much on, because the 36 Watchers, again, that's a myth that exists in the world. When you grow up in Jewish tradition, not necessarily religion, the idiom 36 righteous people in Hebrew, they don't say it with numbers, they say it with letters, because in Hebrew, the Hebrew letters have numerical values to them, like Roman numerals.
Hmm.
So the letter that is 30, that the value is 30, is Lamed, 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 like that. And the letter that is numerical value is 6, is Vav, V-A-V. So the idiom Lamed Vav, which means 36, talks about the 36 righteous people. It's basically like I'm going to be displaying my ignorance here. The four wise men in the, in
From
the, in
from
the nativity
Christianity?
scene. Yeah, in the nativity scene, there are four of them, right?
Okay. I
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's on the
think it was
same level.
three.
Okay, then I'm wrong. So the
Okay.
three wise men. Okay, you see, in Christianity, they only need three. In Judaism, I guess they need 36. So the three wise men, which is an idiom that every boy in the U.S. knows, every girl in the U.S. knows, when you grow up in Jewish tradition, you know about Lamed Vav. It's in the reality of you growing up. And there's only one reference to that in Jewish religious texts. And I was always fascinated with it, because what it literally says is that in every generation, there are 36 people watching over the world. I did not make that up. That exists
Hmm.
inside Jewish texts. What I did was I took it and ran with it, because I wanted to find something esoteric, a myth that exists, like the Knights Templar, like King Arthur and the Round Table, something on that level, but something that was untouched before I touched it. So that is
Hmm.
what gave birth to that. And in 2012, I stayed the night in a magical one-bedroom apartment in a high-rise in Tel Aviv, overlooking the Mediterranean. Perfect summer night, stars and moon. I was in the balcony. I opened my computer, and the first chapter of the book wrote itself. That was the beginning.
Hmm.
So I wanted to say
Awesome.
that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I think great fiction can be founded on some partial truths. I know people will say like every good lie has some truth in it. Well, I think every good story has some truth in it as well. So I think it's impressive that you've managed to pull these parts from your culture specifically and put them in the book, and then all these different things from all these other cultures or common conspiracy theories and secret societies, and really combine them into a book. So I do applaud that, as does everybody else who's laying behind me.
Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you, man.